Welcome to EduRev.
Hi friends, welcome to EduRev platform. So this is the art and culture series of lectures, and in the last lecture, if you could remember, we have dealt about what is the concept of culture, and today we are going to see about the specific nature of Indian culture. So in the last class we dealt about the general characteristics. Today we are going to deal about the specific characteristic of Indian culture. Yes, so there are broadly five different characteristics of Indian culture: continuity and change, there is variety and unity, you have secular outlook, universalism, materialistic and spiritual nature of the Indian culture. Let us try to look at each of them, starting with continuity and change. So, Indian culture is said to have a continuity because of its enduring character. Let us try to understand more of it. Now, there can be many of the cultures that have developed simultaneously all across the world, but the Indian culture is said to have a continuity. Why so? That is because time and again it has endured. It has endured for years together, for thousands of years together. Despite the major changes that have happened, like you may have read about your Harappan civilization or your Indus Valley civilization, but we can still see certain elements of the Harappan culture witnessed even in the present day villages, even today. What is amazing is that even today there are certain elements of the construction of houses, the mechanism of making burnt bricks. So all that has been borrowed for years together, and that is why we say that there is an enduring character to Indian culture. And what is the change that we are witnessing? Because of the increasing cosmopolitan character, because of the increasing globalization, we are also witnessing a change. So there is an element of continuity, there is an element of change also. There have been some worships of in Harappan culture of worshipping the mother goddess, worshipping Pashupati. Now there are certain elements of worshipping female divinity even in the present day world, right? So this form of worship is also getting continued in the present day culture. So materialistically, we have borrowed certain elements, and even in the non-material aspect, we have borrowed certain cultural elements. Thus, we can say a remarkable feature of Indian culture is its change going hand in hand with continuity. Now, not just that, the reform movements which have happened in the Vedic religion, which is brought about by Jainism and Buddhism, now they are actually viewed as Shramana traditions, right? They are viewed as Shramana tradition as an counter movement to your Brahminical religion that has also brought about significant changes to the Indian culture. And the social awakening, the social reform movements that I've talked about, that is also viewed to be bringing about a change to the Indian culture. And let us move forward. Yes, variety and unity. So India has got a variety of diverse elements. Not just that, in spite of this variety of elements, we have also witnessed a unity that is present in India. So what is this variety and unity? How can you think that variety and unity of elements can exist side by side in a nation as diverse, as vast like India? So imagine this. You may have witnessed that people in Uttar Pradesh are using mustard oil for their cooking, whereas people down south in Kerala they use coconut oil for cooking. So in such a scenario, you can also see that there is a vast diversity in the cuisine habit. Why so? Because probably when you think about it, mustard is a rabi crop and it is mostly cultivated in the northern parts of our country, whereas somewhere like down south in Kerala, a crop like your coconuts that's actually found in abundance. So there is always a diversity that you can witness in every aspect of Indian life. Similarly, take the case of Bhangra dance of Punjab. What is the similarity? Take a look at the slide. What is the similarity of Bhangra dance of Punjab or the Pongal of Tamil Nadu or the Bihu dance of Assam? What is the similarity? The similarity of all these three things is that they are celebrated and practiced after a rich harvest of crops. They are all harvesting festivals. Many languages and dialects are spoken in our country. Similarly, we have a great deal of religions that is taking place. People worshipping almost like 8 great different religions of the world. They coexist in a very harmonious manner. Numerous styles of architecture and sculptures and paintings they have developed here. Why is there so much variety in our culture? Now, the vastness of the country, there can be two divisions, or you can say there can be two reasons, two broad reasons for this vastness or this much variety to happen in our culture. The first reason is the vastness of the country and the variation in its physical and climatic features. That could be one very important reason. The second reason is because of the intermingling amongst the various ethnic groups. So we find people belonging to, again, take a look at the slide that you have. We find people belonging to different races like Proto-Australoids, Negroids, Mongoloids, you have the Caucasoids, intermingled in our culture. And because of this, people belonging to other culture, when they invaded our country or when they came to our country as travelers, they brought with them their own cultural habits which got intermingled within our culture. This has led to a cultural synthesis. This has led to an amalgamation of culture. Yes, stitched clothes. Yes, stitched clothes such as salwars, kurtas, they were brought to India by the Kushanas and the Shakas. Now, previously, what happened prior to that, Indians they wore the clothes which were majorly unstitched, and then followed by that, we had the British invasion, and who introduced shirts and trousers, right? So this is how, even in a basic thing like your clothing, there is a variety. And right now, we have increasingly taken to the British way of living. So this wearing of shirts and trousers. So that has become a most common feature for everybody. So that is how, in spite of the variety, there is a unifying element. There is a unifying element, be it in the form of the ethnicity because of the intermingling of various races. Now, all the races are spread all across the country because of the way we wear the clothing. The most normal formal clothings are mostly similar. And similarly, we have distinctive flavors also getting emanated in different regions of the country, like the chikan work of Lucknow, the fulkari work of Punjab. All these are some things that have to be taken note of because these are majorly showing the regional flavor. In spite of the physical barriers, Indians they used to travel from one part of the country to another for trade or pilgrimage. Not just that, military campaigns. Yes, that is very, very, very important. Military campaigns also because of the invasion of kings, of the rulers from one place to another. You have military campaigns because of which people moved from one place to another. There happened to be an exchange of ideas, and that is also in spite of the physical barriers because of trade, because of the pilgrimage activity, because of your military campaigns, because of these three reasons, there has led to be a commonness in the Indian culture, a commonness, a development of commonness happened in the Indian culture. Another unifying factor, my dear friends, is of course the climate. You cannot forget the climate because that is something that is said to unify our country because of the monsoonal nature of Indian temperature or Indian climate in general. What happens because of this monsoonal nature? Indian agriculture as such is driven by this kind of monsoonal pattern, which gives a unity to the whole country. Our economy is driven by the monsoonal pattern. Because of the failure of monsoons, we face a deficit of our economy. So by this manner, we also have a variety in unity. Let us move forward. On the other hand, the differences in the relief features, they have also affected the food patterns. They have also affected the dress that we wear, the houses, and the economic activities of the people. Like if you see somewhere in the hill station, maybe in Himachal Pradesh or in Kashmir, you can find transhumance that is taking place. They move up and down because to get the favorable climate, they move up and down the hills. So you call it to be the transhumance nature of the people. Similarly, down south, people are increasingly taking to fishing activity because of the closeness to the oceans, to the seas. So there is always a difference in the economic patterns that you can observe based upon the geographical features, based upon the relief features. So this has also led to a uniqueness with terms of social, economic and political institutions, which has again influenced the thinking of the people. So what I have to tell you here, because of, to put it in a very short summary, the vastness of the country that is affecting the variety that is happening within our country. The next important thing is because of the intermingling that has happened, not just today, not just yesterday, not just because of the past few years, but there has been a historical intermingling of ethnicity that has developed a variety when you're talking about the food habits, when you're talking about the clothes that we wear, and so on. So, regional factors, geographical factors, especially the vastness of the country, that is one agenda. The second thing is the intermingling that is happening with regard to trade, with regard to ethnicity, with regard to your cultural intermingling. All that has led to a great deal of variety. In spite of these diverse elements, there has always been a unity with regard to our people. Now, unity in diversity is also reflected in the political structure that we have witnessed. Now, during the early Vedic period, remember, the society was generally pastoral in its approach. That is, people they moved from place to place in search of pastures. So the society was generally pastoral. And then came a time when people actually settled. So you have a settled agriculture. And with the settling of the people, community development started to take place. Growth of towns started to take place. And we have this political entity by the name of Sabhas and Samiti. And then later on, it led to the concept of Rashtra. Possession of territory became the most important things for the kings to pursue at that point of time, because you have this concept of Rashtra coming into picture and the possession of territory that became the new measure of power. And then later on, we had the age of Mahajanapadas. What happened there? We had the 16 Mahajanapadas that came into picture. Not just that, with very few passage of time, you had emergence of great empires. You had the Ashokan Empire, you had the Mauryan Empire, and you had the very greatest of all, the Mughal dynasty to follow it. So all this, it actually shows that how as a nation, remember, all of it happened and it affected the entire nation. So we as a nation began to be ruled by a central political organization, by a centralizing political organization, which means that there is a unity even in terms of your political format. In the year of 1947, again, yes, of course, in the intermediate, we have the very important British Empire that took place. And because of all this, later on it culminated in the format of 1947 democracy. So India later on became a constitutional democratic republic. So that's how, even in the political format, we have a great deal of unity. Coming to the next point, the next important characteristic of Indian culture is its secular outlook. No matter how much diversity is present, we are always unified. There is always a secular outlook that is present in the minds of the people and in the minds of the government. Our constitution itself says that we are a secular republic, right? So this secular, by the constitution, we have the right to freedom of religion that ensures the secular nature of the entire country. So the state has no religion of its own. Try to remember that. If you have remembered the classes of polity, you might remember that the Western concept of secularism, it is quite detrimental, or it is quite negative in its approach, because there they say that the church and the state are completely separated from one another. But we, on the other hand, we have a positive note, a positive take, a positive concept of secularism, where we say that the state has no religion of its own, but the state tries to protect all the religions equally. So there is the positive concept. So what happens with regard to the secular characteristic of Indian culture is that we have a beautiful cultural synthesis. We have a very beautiful cultural synthesis that is taking place all across the country amongst such a variety of people with very huge religious diversity. Um, Nobody, in fact, nobody thought that this country would sustain for such a long period of time because of the immense diversity that is present in our nation. No one literally thought that India is a democracy, India with so many differences in language, India with so many differences in the religion, could survive for so long years. But we survived. We are a thriving nation even today, thanks to the unity that is present amongst the people in terms of their culture. So that is where you have to learn these kind of important topics. When asked about what are the basic characteristics with Indian culture, try to quote these 5 points. Yes, coming to the next aspect of Indian culture, universalism. So India has got a universal outlook. We have always stood against the principle of racialism. We have stood against the principle of colonialism, and we were actually one of the founding members of the important world order, which is NAM. So India has always championed the cause of other underdeveloped nations. We were always towards the principle of universalism, thanks to the leaders of the erstwhile era. Next. Yes, this is about the materialistic and spiritualistic character of our country. Now, India is often viewed as the land of spirituality. Yes, we are seen to be the land of mysticism, land of spirituality, land of snake charmers. So, in spite of it, we are not just someone who pursue the non-material culture or the spiritual culture alone, because from time immemorial, we have always had the material and the non-material culture going hand in hand with one another. Take the case of the Harappan civilization. It was a very urbanized civilization. There cannot be any doubt to it. It was a very urbanized civilization. There were strong trade ties. People of those civilizations, they were aware. They were mentally aware. They were aware of the spiritual side of the divinity. They were also aware with regard to the scientific discoveries. They had a proper vision in terms of town planning. They had a proper vision in terms of the construction of citadel and the lower portion of the town. They had a vision in terms of a construction of great granary. What if there is a flood? So we have to have a stocking of our own food. So there was always a vision. Similarly, they had extremely good trade ties. So in spite of all this, they also had spiritual worship going hand in hand. Similarly, if you take the discoveries of theories like Earth rotating around the sun or the Earth is round, these were actually made by Indians long back. The Europeans actually accepted it. Even in philosophical thought, you have atheistic thinking that actually developed in India by means of the knowledge that has been propounded by Buddhist and Jainist. We took to atheistic thinking also. So by far, you can say that in the area of mathematics, in the area of science, in the field of medicine, very, very important, you had a profound development of material knowledge along with spirituality. So this is a very intelligent combination of how Indians developed materialistically and spiritually. Cultural identity, religion, region, and ethnicity. Here I have to explain one very, very important point, that is, which of these identities assert itself at a certain point of time. It depends on the political, social, or economic context in which the person finds himself or herself. That's very, very important. We have different cultural identity. You and me, we have different cultural identity. What cultural identity I am trying to focus at this point of time depends on the political, the social, and the economic and the cultural context in which I am in at that point of time. You can also add the geographical context in which I am present at that point of time. Let us try to explain this further. This is a very complex sentence. Let us try to break it down. That is, a Brahmin in Tamil Nadu is quite different from a Brahmin in Kashmir. Though they share the same Brahmin tag to them, they are Brahmins by nature, but the food that they consume, the practices, the rituals that they perform is quite different because of their geographical separation. Similarly, take the case of a Bengali Brahmin from the case of Tamil Nadu Brahmin. In the case of a Tamil Nadu Brahmin, they do not consume fish, whereas you cannot separate a Bengali from fish, from eating fish. It is a part of their culture. You have to embrace it. So, by large, you can say what identity of an individual gets asserted at a certain point of time, it depends on their geographical, economic, and the socio-cultural aspect in which they are present at that point of time. And people of different religions and castes, they may have common regional cultural traits. A Muslim and a Hindu present in Uttar Pradesh, they may take pride in the cultural elements which unify them as a part of them being from the state of Uttar Pradesh. Now, in this context, regional there is a regional identity which is common to both these people, be it in the Muslim or be it for the Hindu. There is a common regional identity. So that is again to be remembered. And there are certain ethnical identities also, ethnic tribal identities, which gets asserted and amongst the people of the Northeast. A tribal group from Northeast may have different cultural aspects to them. Now there are numerous tribals present in the case of Nagaland, for example, and each of these tribes will have different cultural identity to them. So by means of ethnicity, by means of cultural identity, by means of region, there can be very huge differences. And all of this makes a part of the Indian culture. Now, what are the present day cultural influences? Westernization, emergent national cultural styles, and the popular culture. All this prove to be an important cultural influences. The current influence of westernization, for example, if you take the emergent national cultural styles, we have certain things like the khadi or your Gandhi cap proved to be some of the important ceremonial cultural symbol of the nation. So what really happens today? We are witnessing a cultural crisis which is very evident. Honesty and integrity are at discount today. There is a crisis of the value system. So take a look at this slide quickly, and with that we are concluding the lecture for the day. A set of practice questions is given for you here and explain the specific characteristics of Indian culture we have listed out here. And culture is dynamic in nature. You can analyze the first module to get the answer of the very first question. And watch EduRev for the complete package of questions, videos which have been prepared by UPSC experts. Thank you so much and have a nice day.